Thank you, John and Sandro. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Shannon Bream in for Martha McCallum. This is The Story. We are live at the Trump trial in downtown Manhattan, where the jury is deliberating right now. Behind closed doors here, the former president charged with falsifying business records to cover up a payment to porn star Stormy Daniels before the 2016 election. He is facing up to 4 years in prison on each count, and he says he did nothing illegal.
Mother Teresa could not beat these charges. These charges are rigged. The whole thing is rigged. You have a trial like this where the judge is so conflicted he can't breathe. He's got to do his job. And it's not for me, that I can tell you. It's a disgrace. And I mean that. Mother Teresa could not beat those charges, but we'll see.
The Five co-host Judge Jeanine Pirro is with me here at the courthouse. All right, Judge, what has struck you? The final arguments, the jury instructions, now we wait.
Well, there's so much that strikes me. I mean, on the one hand, I've been saying continuously that Michael Cohen is the linchpin of this case, and the judge gave an instruction: if you believe that someone has lied to you about a material fact, then you, of course, are free to disregard that person's entire testimony. If they go to that issue regarding Michael Cohen, most of the consideration of this case is done. However, what the judge did was he muddied up the waters, and what was a relatively simple case has now been turned into a very complicated case by the judge saying, look, we've got these misdemeanors, but if you believe that any of these three things happened, a federal election campaign violation, a tax violation, or the third one is the falsification of records, and we don't believe there were any falsifications, and we don't really care whether or not you all agree on which one of these three things happened, then you can convict the defendant of a felony. And that, to me, was the most shocking part of this. And the judge clearly was in a situation where he said that the classification of income as a reimbursement when it's not it can be considered a tax violation, even though you haven't underpaid, even though you paid as much as you're supposed to. It was almost as though he was making this up as he went along, and they answered the question which they refused to answer in the beginning in the indictment or the bill of particulars, which is, what is the crime that resurrects these two dead misdemeanors? And the judge said, hey, don't worry about it. If you go to column A, B, or C, well, you don't even have to agree on them, but we'll get them, folks.
Well, and we didn't hear about what that underlying crime was. There were allusions here and there during the arguments, during the summations, but we were all waiting, and I'm thinking, if we're all lawyers sitting in there waiting and watching to figure out what this underlying thing is, how confusing do you think that is for the jury? We know they have two attorneys on the jury. How confused do you think they are, or do you think they see it clearly?
Well, one of the things that you hear in the courtroom, is that the juror who had 3 notebooks filled with notes was the lawyer, the corporate lawyer. So I'm saying to myself, the corporate lawyer is going to start, standing up and talking about all of the notes. If he goes through all his notes in an effort to do what the jury could ask for a reread of, then we're in for a long haul here. But at the same time, you kind of say to a jury in cases like this, and I've tried these, nothing like this one, because this isn't real. Sometimes difficult decisions are relatively simple. And based upon who the linchpin is here, this is a simple case. There were no records. No one put Donald Trump in touch with anyone vis-a-vis the voucher, the invoice, or the check. And we know that Donald Trump was concerned about Melania. So, they would have to prove that he did it for the campaign to the exclusion of any other option. And they didn't even argue that.
And I do think that that was a jury instruction that was good for the defense, where he said a campaign expenditure, if it's something that could have been expended outside of the campaign, if there was no candidacy, which Trump supporters will argue, he didn't want his wife or his family to find out about this or be embarrassed. That was something that the jury could then take and say, oh, it wasn't a campaign expenditure. This isn't connected to any election law or that kind of thing. He still leaves them other doors, other places they could go. But that was a win for the defense in that sense.
But think about the fact that, Shannon, that you've got Michael Cohen talking about the federal election campaign violation. You've got David Pecker, the head of AMI, talking about a federal election agreement. And then the defendant in this case is not allowed the opportunity to bring in Brad Smith, I think his name is.
The former FEC commissioner.
To talk about what really is a federal election campaign violation. And yet the jury is going to be ruling on that and voting on that when the defense was denied the opportunity to present evidence. There is so much reversible error in this, it could reverse a cruise ship.
Well, and here's the thing. If there is a conviction, we have no idea where this jury is going. If there's conviction, of course there's going to be appeal. And so many of the things that you brought up, that's what the Trump legal team is going to do. But you will have months, if not years, of him being referred to as a convicted felon all through election season, and something I would imagine the Biden-Harris campaign is looking forward to using if that happens.
Yes. And
so there's the political along with the legal.
Yeah, and ultimately, Shannon, it's about politics. I mean, Robert De Niro was here yesterday, supposedly, to rile people up against Donald Trump. All he did was rile up an audience, and he told them to F off and called them gangsters. I mean, that was the Biden plan here. And as you say, Biden has said, we're going to refer to him as a convicted felon. We look forward to talking on the day that the verdict comes out.
Okay, Judge, we are just getting some word. There are reports from inside the courtroom. There may be some kind of activity. Now, whether this is the jury saying to the judge, we have some questions, we want you to read back part of the jury instructions, we want a portion of testimony read back, we have no idea. But there is some kind of activity, so we are trying to determine at this point what that may be. But you've seen this. We've seen this when juries go out. Sometimes they have a question. We know there are 55 pages of jury instructions. In this case, he did not give them to them in writing, but it said, if you have questions or you want me to read something else, come back. So here's President Trump. This is live. Of course, he's staying around here, as he's got to do, and stay while the jury deliberations are underway. But he and his legal team will go back into the courtroom if there's a question from the jury, if there is something that the judge needs to get involved with, or if there's a verdict. Listen, I think we'd all be shocked to get something this early, but it wouldn't be shocking to have some kind of question from the jury at this point.
Well, there's no question. Juries come back with notes all the time. I mean, and I would get them.
What does that mean?
It could be, you know what, Judge, we want to work past 4:30 today. Right. Where does the judge get off saying, 4:30 you can all go home, but I want your phones for the next 3 hours? I mean, none of it makes sense. Or it could be that they want to read back of something or maybe they're going to ask the judge, do we do 34 at once or do we do each verdict?
All kinds of questions.
It could be, we want soda.
Yeah, I mean, at the beginning, what kind of clues should we look for from a jury this early when they've got questions or whatever they ask, if we can find out what they ask, that's always super helpful for us trying to guess where they may be stuck.
They have to put it on the record for both sides, so we will know what the note is. Generally, they're going to ask about a read back or to look at evidence, but I understand they took the laptops in, so they have the exhibits that have been marked into evidence in the jury room, in the deliberation room. I imagine it might be a read back based upon,
Think about how many weeks ago, okay, we're sitting in
6 weeks.
The days of Hope Hicks and David Pecker and all of these early folks that we heard from. It seems like ancient history. And so for them, as they're trying to piece the puzzle together, as they have their deliberations, they may say, yes, we need something from week 2, which was a while ago.
There's truth to the saying, justice delayed is justice denied. And the truth is that this has been drawn out for so long. There was no justification for a week off for this jury from Tuesday to Tuesday. There was no justification for them not to be sequestered. This is the former president of the United States of America and the possible future president. Probable. And if in any case there should be a sequestration, it's this case. I would have said to the jury, bring your toothbrushes, tell the clerk who you want us to call, and you get 1 call each, not 2.
Okay, and by the way, we know that judges do different things and have different reasons for sequestering, for not sequestering certain trials. Why do you think this judge decided not to let them go about their business and go about their lives in something that is such a critical trial?
Well, let me ask you this. We know already that jury pool is from a group of people in Manhattan who are 85 to 90% anti-Trump. Vehemently
just based on voting the last time around.
Based on voting.
We don't know how these folks voted.
But we don't know how these folks voted, but that's where, jurors come from. They come from the voting booth, not the voting booth.
The pool.
The pool.
Here.
And, so I think that is a danger. I think that in a case like this especially, they should have had them sequestered because there is so much chance, because there's so much on the line. This is a top job in the United States of America, and you're allowing the jury to go out and possibly be influenced or to even read a newspaper. I would say to a jury, you can't watch the news, you can't do any of that.
Click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis. You won't get it anywhere else.